Now, since the dawn of gaming, bosses have been designed to test us, and whether it's approaching a screen-filling enemy or a final antagonist, the player needs to call upon every skill that they've learned in order to emerge victorious. But then there are certain games that kick things off with a show-stopping battle. Whether it's due to the villain's creative attacks, staggering size, or charismatic persona, the player is just left in awe from the very beginning. And that's what we're here to talk about today. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are the 9 best first bosses in video games. Number 9. Del Lago, Resident Evil 4. In Resident Evil 4's opening section, our protagonist Leon S. Kennedy must ride a boat to reach the other side of a lagoon. However, his sailing trip is cut rather short by a gargantuan zombie salamander known as Del Lago. Being the first true boss, this encounter is expected to be pretty straightforward, but the confrontation immediately throws most gamers off, since equipped weapons are off limits, and instead, the only means to kill this sea monster is with a perfectly tossed harpoon, or to be more specific, about 15 of them. But what's great about this boss is that it's always reasonably hard, even after repeated playthroughs. Bosses like El Gigante and Verdugo are no picnic at first, but they're easy pickings after memorizing their patterns. But that's not the case here. The player must be constantly monitoring Del Lago's position, since there's just a small window of opportunity to strike him. Throughout this fight, the player has to carefully navigate their boat as well to avoid slamming into the aquatic beastie or any nearby logs. After all, it only takes one little knock for Leon to be hurled into the water, and when that happens, our curtain-haired hero will only have a few seconds to get back on board before Del Lago swallows him whole. Number 8. Meg, Hades. In Hades, the Greek demigod Zagreus vows to escape the underworld to reunite with his mother on the surface, and since he has to go through literal hell to get there, his journey will be far from pleasant. And starting off in the bowels of Tartarus, Zagreus must make his way through 10 demon-filled arenas before progressing to the next realm. But before Zag can move on, his path is blocked by Meg. Even though she's the first boss, Meg is not going to make things easy. Not only is she the child of Uranus and the mightiest of the Furies, but she's also Zag's ex. And since he dumped her, this Titanborn has a bone to pick with him. After chastising her former half, Meg launches herself at Zag, summoning witches, spike traps, and hellfire. As her health decreases, the demoness's attacks become more relentless and challenging. And this is the thing, Meg is probably going to mop the floor with you 10 or 11 times in a row. But although fighting the same boss repeatedly could be tedious, that doesn't apply here, thanks to their entertaining exchanges. Because their dialogue keeps changing, the player gains insight into the pair's relationship and the goings-on in Hades every time they meet. Number 7. Tricky, Diddy Kong Racing. Don't let Diddy Kong Racing's adorable aesthetic fool you. This N64 racer is filled with cute and cuddly creatures, but that doesn't mean that it's a walk in the park. And nothing exemplifies DKR's ruthlessness more than the bosses. After completing the first 4 races, the player will be challenged by Tricky the Triceratops. Whoever reaches the top of the mountain first will then be crowned the victor. But when Tricky gives himself a head start before the race even begins, it's clear this pronged lizard isn't playing fair. Simply put, there's no way to beat Tricky conventionally, since he's faster than every playable character. If a racer gets ahead of him, he'll flatten them like a pancake, and when this occurs, the player might as well restart the race since there's no chance of catching up. And although Tricky is, rather tricky, this boss battle is crucial, since it proves that there's more to winning in this game than driving well. Instead, racers have to rely on items like missiles and speed boosts, which require timing and precision. Because items can be powered up, the drivers have to strategize when and where to use them in order to give themselves the best chance of winning. Number 6. Valus, Shadow of the Colossus. Shadow of the Colossus opens with Wanda seeking out a means to resurrect his lover Mono. A mysterious being reaches out and promises to grant Wanda's wish, but only if he destroys the 16 colossi that are roaming the lands. Upon hearing the words Colossus, the player knows that these enemies are going to be pretty damn huge. But even those expecting to run into giants that are maybe 10 to 20 feet tall are left absolutely flabbergasted when they bear witness to the first boss, who is a 70-foot tall golem. When encountering a boss for the first time, gamers instinctively assess their opponents for weak points and scan their surroundings for anything useful. But while gazing at this large lad, you can't help but just, stare, not out of fear, but out of awe. Even when the lumbering giant staggers towards Wanda, you're rendered speechless by his incomprehensible size. Being the introductory enemy, he's rather easy to dispose of, but nevertheless you feel proud whilst admiring his lifeless husk, knowing that he was slain by your blade. However, that pride soon turns to terror once you realise that there are 15 more colossi to face, many of which are far, far larger than this one. Number 5. The Greater Guardian, Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. Although the Greater Guardian appears very late in Eternal Darkness, this cosmic monstrosity is technically the first boss. Since our hero in this chapter, Paul, is armed with a ton of spells and weapons, the fight should go smoothly, right? Well, unfortunately not, since the Guardian is immune to everything but magic, meaning that this is not a straightforward affair. And what's worse is that Paul must stand perfectly still to conjure an incantation, making him a sitting duck most of the time. Also, the more powerful the enchantment, the longer it takes to perform it, giving the boss even more time to make an attack. Naturally, the most sensible thing to do is stand far away from the Guardian and use your magic, but unfortunately this tactic doesn't help much, since the Lovecraftian fiend can strike Paul by conjuring zombies and emitting lasers. Near the end of the battle, the Guardian seals off most of the room as well, preventing Paul from relying on long-range attacks. Although the Greater Guardian is an arduous adversary, the fight itself is actually perfectly fair. The player should be well versed in defensive and defensive magic at this stage, and so therefore should know the best course of action to take this ancient beast down. Number 4. Toriel, Undertale. Because of Undertale's unique gameplay, players would be confused if the mechanics weren't explained thoroughly. As such, it's no surprise that the opening battle with Toriel feels more like a training session than an actual boss fight. Although encounters like this are often basic, the significance behind Toriel's lesson cannot be emphasized enough. The lamb-like tutor doesn't just teach Frisk how to fight, but also how to show mercy. As her defeat looms near, Toriel gives Frisk the opportunity to spare her. Because Frisk can only gain XP points and boost their love by killing, most first-timers murder any enemy they meet, believing that there's no advantage by showing mercy. But during the climax, a major bombshell is dropped. Upon every kill, Frisk gained execution points, not experience. The LV doesn't stand for love, but actually level of violence. All this time, Frisk thought that they were the savior when they were actually the monster. Although Toriel's battle seems simple, it leaves the biggest emotional gut punch in the whole game. Unfortunately, most people don't realize it until it's far too late. Number 3. The Argus boss battle, Vanquish. So there's a little thing that you probably need to know about me, and that is that I absolutely love the video game Vanquish, and this can be best expressed with its first boss battle against the Argus. Now I could go through this and tell you how battling this giant mechanical monster is just an adrenaline rush for the ages, but I think that it's best for me to explain it in the best way possible, with lots of noises and sounds. Are you ready? So the Argus drops in and just goes, "Alright mate," and Sam Rockthroat Gideon's like, "Alright, chill out dude, I'll be with you in a second, I've just got to finish this tab," and then you pop that down and you start the action. It's all like, and you're sliding along, like, grinding your ass into dust, and then you stand up and you go, and he goes, "No!" And then you throw a rocket right down his armhole, and he's like, "I have an armhole? Damn, this sucks!" And it detonates and falls down. There's a massive explosion, and you feel cool as fuck. Scientifically 100% proven. Number 2. The Great Mighty Poo, Conker's Bad Fur Day. Conker's Bad Fur Day initially started off as a cutesy kid-friendly title, but when it was considered too similar to other 3D platformers like Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie, Rare switched up everything, turning Conker into an adult-orientated game and filled it with swearing, gore, and nudity. And no part of Conker's Bad Fur Day earned its R rating more than the opening boss. As the titular squirrel enters the center of Pooh Mountain, he encounters the Great Mighty Poo. The self-proclaimed Slot-Prano will then perform an operatic ballad, explaining how he intends to destroy Conker by tossing feces at him. This song is so hysterically disgusting and surprisingly well performed that the sweet corn munching scat pile over here would be memorable without anything else, even if the fight was total crap. But the method to defeat this malicious manure is as inventive as it is hilarious. As Pooh hurls fecal matter around the room, Conker must toss toilet paper into his mouth. By doing this over and over, this dastardly discharge will belt out one piercing note which shatters a nearby glass door, giving Conker access to a toilet lever. Once pulled, the evil excrement is then flushed away. Even though Conker's Bad Fur Day is crammed with gut-busting moments, the Great Mighty Poo may be the biggest highlight. And number 1, Poseidon, God of War 3. God of War knows how to start with a bang. The original opened with Kratos squaring off with the multi-headed Hydra, the sequel began with the Ghost of Sparta tussling with the Colossus of Rhodes, but man, God of War 3 took show-stopping openers to a whole new level. Rather than easing the player into the gameplay gently, this threequel kicks off with Kratos and the Titans ascending Mount Olympus, forcing the god of sea Poseidon to retaliate. Although Kratos has fought all sorts of gods before, it's a little different when facing a foe whose central weapon is the entire ocean. With the sea at his fingertips, Poseidon can hurl tsunamis and whirlwinds at his nephew with little effort. Even though this sequence is gorgeous, it isn't mere spectacle. Because this battle is tied directly to the overarching narrative and has long-lasting consequences, the player is fully invested from the very beginning. And being the first battle, the player knows that this is just the tip of the iceberg. As challenging as Poseidon is, there are plenty more bosses in Kratos' journey that will prove to be far more daunting. And there we go, my friends. Those were the 9 best first bosses in video games. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. As always, I've been Jules, and you can go follow me over on Instagram and Twitter, where it's @RetroJ, but the O is a 0. Hope to see you over there, my friends. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Hope you're treating yourself well with love and respect, because you deserve all the best things in life, alright? And don't let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise. You are a massive ledge, and you deserve the bloody best. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.